Before,
Recording in progress.
thank you. Before we get started with today's presentation, I want to take care of some housekeeping. Wait a minute.
Stella, you're on mute.
Yeah, I got a feedback. I want to take care of some housekeeping rules. First of all, I will be moving. The slideshow will be moving along to just give you a glimpse. But first of all four bills require that state educational agencies of Georgia, from the Board of Regents of the university system and state technical college systems, and local boards of education and local school systems, act to prevent the use of curricula or training programs which act upon, promote, or encourage certain concepts. Now, go to the next slide. The other three characteristics of these particular bills is that they are restricting the teaching of what's called divisive concepts. Next slide. Next. And it requires the establishment of a complaint resolution procedure for anyone objecting to the course content. Next slide. Next slide. It imposes penalties for failure to comply with the law if enacted, resulting in a loss of public school funds. And it has been reported that with regard to school funding, because of these particular bills, in particular SB 377, these schools, public schools, they are bound to lose millions of dollars in school funding because of these particular restrictive bills. And it also requires the establishment of a complaint resolution procedure for anyone objecting to the course content. And I may have said that already. But the bottom line is that the imposition of these penalties is going to result in, it's estimated, losses in the millions of dollars that should be allocated to these public schools and Title I schools as well. Going further to banning literature deemed to be obscene. Next slide. Here, we have two bills that are pending in the legislature, SB 226 and House Bill 1217. These bills go on to further censor literature and art from school classrooms and libraries that previously and for years have been an integral part of the curriculum in elementary and high schools, as well as public colleges and universities, all levels. And these bills are calculated to have a chilling effect on teachers attempting to develop lessons plans that would provide an accurate and honest portrayal of our art and our history. Next slide. And would also result in the failure of our, let me go back, would also result, because of the alleged failure to comply with the laws requiring that the schools comply with keeping out and excluding any materials that are considered to be divisive in nature or patently offensive or in some way not suitable reading material for minors lacking in serious literary, scientific, or artistic content, will result in those school districts having their funds cut. And I can't say this enough because it appears that this is not the first year that we've seen cuts in public school funding. And this is just, I believe, a ruse and an opportunity to go further, deeper into cutting bills, cutting money from schools that there is no priority for as far as the legislature is concerned. Next slide. We're now going to the Parent Bill of Rights. In this particular case, Parents' Bill of Rights and the HB 372 and SB 435 are in play here in many ways and really is concerning. First, as to SB 449 and 1178. Next slide. Next slide. At a time when public school funding has been cut, as I've indicated, and if particular practices implemented result in further cuts in public funding, we need to ensure that there is quality education for all public school students. What SB 449 does is that it gives the parents rights which really already heretofore existed, but now will be codified in a bill that requires that the parent be allowed to review all instruction materials, to assess child's grades, grading policy, to be informed of a child's curriculum in each grading period, dispute elementary and secondary education curriculum, and in many ways have the right to pull their child out of, first of all, a particular course such as sex education that they may disagree with in the way in which they choose to raise their child. And the parent may request all of this documentation and may appeal any refusal to provide that information by the Board of Education. Parents also under these bills have an option to remove their child from the public school and place their child in various other types of educational settings. Public school, private school, religious school, home study programs, or other educational institutions. And there is some indication that in some of these instances, parents may receive some funding from the Board of Education in order to facilitate this move from the school to which the parent objects in terms of keeping their child there. Now, as between SB 449 and HB 1178, it's been reported just a couple of days ago that HB 1178 has a very high chance of passing. We have to keep focusing on that particular piece of legislation to see where that goes. However, that's the state of what parental rights may look like should this bill pass or these bills pass. As to transgender sports, HB 372 and SB 435 provide for a classification of sporting events or activities based on gender and treat that classification, which is denoted by the sex that's on the birth certificate, to separate out students and prohibit and forbid them from participating in particular sports. With regard to SB 435, this bill has just recently passed the Senate and will be on its way to the House on or before crossover day to see what happens in the House on that bill. It specifically says, and this is really interesting, it shall be unlawful for Georgia public school students or teams to compete against a Georgia public school that permits a person of one gender to participate in an athletic program that is designated for persons of the opposite gender. This bill had a very large percentage of favorability amongst the Senate committee that read, discussed, and voted on it just 2 days ago. So it's on its way for further consideration in the House. Now we get to voter suppression. Here, you're going to see a fair number of these bills that are remnants of the 2020-2021 legislative session. These particular bills obviously didn't make it into the SB 202 bill that passed, called the Elections Integrity Act. So they are being conjured up again and revisited by those who wish to further tighten the binds that interfere with our right to vote. Next slide. For example, here, you'll see in elections and voting that we have SB 325, which there is a companion also in this particular section, and that's 1317, is a bill relating to elections and primaries to remove the remaining provisions relating to absentee ballot drop boxes. And that's on the theory that these ballot drop boxes were put in place for the 2020 election only because of the pandemic. And since at this time, there is no need to keep this institution of absentee ballot drop boxes, there is in this bill a provision to eliminate any further reference to absentee ballot drop boxes under the law. This is a bill that definitely needs to be challenged. And when we get to the call to action provision, you'll see that we're asking all of you to contact your representatives to request that they vote no on these bills. Next. We're also revisiting a few more of the bills that didn't make it into SB 202 last year. And that's SB 71, which ends no excuse absentee voting and limits it to voters over 75 years of age with disabilities or anyone who will be absent from their precinct, that is required to be absent from their precinct, which could mean someone in the military, someone in the National Guard. There is no particular set of definitions concerning that, but that's now back and active and may pass because it's currently in the Senate, may pass, and if it does, it will be going over to the House, and we'll see where that ends up. But we still enjoy no excuse voting. But if this bill passes, we will no longer have that option and opportunity. SB 69 is a bill that blocks automatic voter registration when applying for renewing a driver's license. This was in the 2020-2021 session called the Motor Voter Bill. This is where, for example, if a student who is 17 and a half years old and will be of age within the voting cycle to vote, he may, if he's applying for a driver's license or an ID, he may automatically be registered to vote. Since this particular provision did not make it into SB 202. Again, it rears its head again. And what it would do if it passes would block automatic voter registration and would require the applicant, whether they're voting, applying for a driver's license, renewing it, or a ID and renewing it, or because of a change of address, will have to affirmatively state that they are requesting voter registration in order to ensure their right to vote. Now, the next bill is really kind of a good news bill, but I just listed them in this order because what this bill does, 1318, this first of all was authored by Democrats, and it's relating to the conduct of primaries and elections to provide that the county election superintendent may permit any elector who lives in the county to vote in any precinct in the county. And this can be done in a primary election or in the general or runoff under certain conditions. But what this does is that it conflicts with the provisions that are in the law under SB 202, which to an extent allow someone in the county to vote out of precinct, but it requires that they provide a specific excuse. The excuse that was used to describe and explain this bill in the last session was that if someone is on their way home from work on the last day of voting and they run into an accident or a traffic jam and they're getting close to the polls closing, the first precinct that they come upon, they may go in, state and explain their circumstance, and their vote will be taken provisionally until the facts can be verified. But under 1318, it would eliminate all of that requirement to provide an excuse that will be validated and will be approved in the precinct in which the voter had to vote on that day. Next is 531. And this was really kind of concerning and a head scratcher for me. And that is that it's a bill relating to elections and primaries to prohibit election superintendents or boards or registrars from accepting private funding to assist in managing board operations. It was recommitted to the Senate in January of this year. Don't know where it stands at this point, but it would seem to me that this is just another attempt on the part of the Republicans to make it difficult for voter services to be made available and for the boards of elections and the superintendents who run them to provide the best service to the voters during an election season. This last bill, HB 1085, is a bipartisan bill. And this is a bill relating to primaries and elections, which would provide, if it passes, for an option for municipalities to adopt and use instant runoff voting for their elections. Now, what does that mean? What it really means is that it would be a one-stop election period for the voter. The candidates would be lined up on the ballot in certain order, and then the voter would actually vote for those candidates in order of preference. And at some point in the process, the winner will surface and there won't be a need for a runoff or an additional voting day. Those are the bills that are currently pending with regard to voter suppression. But as I said, I decided that it would be kind of a break in the tension to show that there were two bills that are really supportive of giving voters an opportunity to exercise their right to vote without oppressively being denied or having to make excuses in order to vote in a particular venue. And also, it would cut down on expenses if the last bill, 1085, passes, because it would be a one-stop voting scenario for every voter. Now, next slide. In Georgia, for a bill to remain active, it's got to pass either the Georgia House or Senate and then cross over to the other legislative body by a certain date. And in this case, we have crossover day for this session, this legislative session, to be March 15th, 2022. And then the actual last day in which any business can be done with regard to the bills that are pending is what's called sine die day, which is the last day of business for this particular legislative session, which is April 4th, 2022. And what I should explain to those who are not involved with FDW or not involved really with regard to the political scene, crossover day is the day in which one body passes a bill that it has voted on over to the other body. And this has got to be done by crossover day, or it will die in the committee in which it exists at that time. The other side of the House will consider the bill, possibly have hearings, possibly send it back with some additional concerns. And then it goes, it either dies where it goes back, or they keep it and vote on it. And if it passes, those particular bills will eventually end up on the governor's desk. And the governor will have a specified period of time within which to review the bills, to either sign the bill or veto the bill or take no action at all. Now, the important part of this particular process that I'm going through is the following. Next. There's a call to action. And this call to action is important for the following reasons. It's time for the voters to push back against legislators' unwarranted campaigns of, in this case, in this season, censorship and disinformation, and exercise the right and the right to exercise your free speech and expression, and the right to demand your children have a quality education. You need to hold your elected representatives accountable to focus on the need to provide students a free, accurate, and honest education, and the need to fully fund public school education and provide students with the access they need to resources that they need to succeed. And of course, it goes without saying, with voter suppression, we have a constitutional right to exercise our right to vote. You need to contact your representatives, and that information will be provided in the next slide, to express to them your discontent about this regular, consistent, and persistent effort to suppress the right to vote. Next slide. You'll see that the bills that we've just briefly touched upon, which you will see in further detail when you receive a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, these bills are considered to be very concerning. And you now still have the opportunity to contact your representatives to express your discontent and to urge them not to vote yes on these particular pieces of legislation. And in order to do that, we provide the following. Next slide. in this time for action, you have a couple of options. One, to go to my voter page at www.mvp.sos.ga.gov to find your Georgia House representatives. And you can also track them with the bill number. And find your Senate representatives at GA Senate Ethics Committee, or go on the Georgia State Assembly website, and you will find your representatives there, their district, their contact information, their telephone numbers. We're asking you to call your senator, your House representative, or sponsors of the bills. Let them know you oppose all forms of censorship and voter suppression, and encourage them to urge them to vote no on these bills that we have addressed today. And very, very simple language. Hello, my name is, and I'm a resident of Fayette County. I'm contacting you to vote no on HB or SB number, and oppose any other attempts to censor our educators or to attempt to roll back voting rights in the state of Georgia. These bills will significantly harm my right to freedom of speech and or my right to vote. I might also add that you should contact the governor at the state capitol, Governor Kemp's office, and his number is also accessible in the Georgia Assembly website. Finally, last slide. You can get a summary of the bills under the call to action section by focusing your camera on this QR code, taking a picture, and the bill should materialize. It's magic, but that's what we are offering at this time with regard to the summary of the bills. For a full, complete copy of the entire PowerPoint presentation, as I've indicated, please put your name and your email address in the chat, and you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, which will give you some more detailed information about the bills and about the impact that it's having and will have on the school system, as well as those who have sacrificed and have sought to teach their students and make them better citizens. So with that concludes the actual PowerPoint presentation. Now are there any questions in the chat?
Yes, there are, Your Honor. There's a comment. One was from Dawn, and she said that the bills relating to education seem to be aimed at ending public education as we know it. There was also a question that said that we need to, should we call other lawmakers who are not our own lawmakers, because one of our lawmakers is on the call today, and that would be our own Senator C. There was also one other question, and it was, I lost it, but I'll get it back to you in just a moment. So if you can answer the question about, should we be calling other lawmakers?
Well, and
the question was, not just because we're a resident of Fayette, we're also residents of Georgia. So I'm wondering if there are others that we can impact besides just our own.
Well, that's a very good question, Dawn, and I'm glad you asked that, because there's a sense of urgency here, and the sense of urgency is, first of all, these bills are right now embedded in the General Assembly. And there is a swirl of activity going on, especially now since we're getting close to crossover day. And so those bills that are in committee under discussion where testimony may be taken, that's where the focus should be for voters who are looking to get the attention of the people who are going to vote on these bills. However, on the other hand, if you're talking about reaching out to congressmen and senators, that certainly was not intended to be excluded. Absolutely. If in fact our federal level legislators can have any influence on what's going on in the State General Assembly, it certainly would be, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It's a matter of a phone call or an email or something of that nature to get the attention of your federal representatives, federal level representatives, and ask them to impress upon their the local representatives the need to really consider seriously their actions in voting to pass these bills.
Excuse me, not my question. I'm talking about our Georgia lawmaker. Even
you're
though they're
talking
not
about,
in
I'm sorry.
even though they're not in our district,
I'm
like if they
sorry.
live in Fulton or they live in other counties,
Okay.
it's those folks that we know.
Okay.
Or
Thank you for, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Absolutely. They can do that. And the representatives from all counties are listed on the actual Georgia Assembly website. So if they have the ability to look and contact legislators from other counties who are on the House or on the Senate, absolutely. I think that that makes a lot of sense. But again, it certainly doesn't even hurt to talk to your federal level congressmen, your senators, and talk to them and see if they can give some guidance on what should be done at the local level.
If I can interject, I want to say thank you, first of all, to our dear, dear leader on this, Judge Stella Owens-Murrell. Great job, great job. But I was on a call this morning with Representative Clyburn from South Carolina, and the message he drove home was, we need to stop preaching to the choir. When these legislators vote for laws, they affect every last one of us within our state. And so as a resident of the state of Georgia, we need to set their phones on fire. And so we're not just talking and preaching to the choir, because I believe, and Senator C can correct me on this, I think they have to log the calls. So if they get 35 calls, they have to write down 35 people called in and said, don't vote on SB, blah, 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 blah. So if we just hit them hard, hit them hard. And I think FCDC is opening their offices again on March 1st, I believe I heard. So if there are going to be opportunities for people to meet and hold each other's hands to help each other be strong, I volunteer to make bread pudding and bring it over there. And we can hold each other's hands and eat and make phone calls and make some good trouble. Just set their phones on fire.
Did you say bread pudding?
Yes, bread pudding from scratch.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that input from Congressman Clyburn, because it really drives home the point, and that is, yes, let's reach out in our counties, our contiguous counties, and rally up representatives there to impress upon the representatives who may be sitting in committee to really vote their conscience on these bills. But to have something come from a congressman, congresswoman, or senator certainly also, I think, will impress the fact that we are concerned about the impact that these bills will have on the educational front on our children.
Excuse me, Stella.
Yes.
Jo Handy Sewell is with us today, and she's with the DeKalb Democratic Women, our sisters on the east side. So she has her hand up and has something to say. Go ahead.
Okay.
Great presentation. Thank you so much for recognizing me. And to my dear friend, Pearline Green, who invited me to this. I'm really here to learn. But Pearline, I'm telling you, you just hit the nail on the head. that I've been thinking about and talking about for years. For years, we've been preaching to the choir.
Mhm.
Our legislators, pretty much our Democratic legislators, they already know what we're trying to do. And calling them, not on, I don't want to say does no good, but to hear somebody on the national level finally say in the Democratic Party, let's call them other folks. And knowing that their calls are logged because they're not paying any attention, because they're not getting the calls. They easily say, well, my constituents want this.
Mhm.
And that's because we're calling our own folk. We're not calling them.
That's right.
But to now know that they are logging the calls and that we're being encouraged, that's the first couple of phone calls we need to make, in my opinion. And I'm glad to know that Clyburn mentioned that. And I hope that word goes out all around the nation, really. And we need to, you know, I know what I've done in the past is print a copy of those legislators in that list. And I keep it right next to my phone. And when it's time to call for action for telephone calls, and even when it's not, just when you got a few minutes, call 10 of them and just say no, just call them. And I've often wondered if that made a difference. Now we know that it does. So glad to be with you ladies. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to getting my copy of the presentation so I can cheat sheet it in DeKalb County, and Pearline gonna help me with it. Thank you so much, ladies.
Well, thank you for being here. Welcome. And of course, you're always welcome. So don't hesitate.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the chat?
And I did want to shout out to Senator Say. She's been on the battlefield for a long time. So glad to see her on this call. And I know she knows what I'm talking about folk calling the other folks' office. Bless you, Senator Say, and hope your health continues to do well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a question. Oh, I see a comment. Okay, exactly. I've followed this for years. Okay, Ms. McGuine wants a copy of the PowerPoint. Is there anything else?
I had a question in the chat.
I'm looking now. Let's see. Let's
John's
see.
question was, now that we have access to the slide deck, what do you advise we do to let those who are not on the call to get engaged with the call for action?
Number one, each one teach one. Sit down with your family, those who are voting age, and go through this bill with them, explain to them the consequences of us not taking some kind of affirmative action that's going to stop the tide of changing the structure of how our children are being taught in elementary school and high school. Now, remember, this so-called red herring, CRT, is something that's taught only at the college, graduate school, and law school level. I recall when I was in law school back in the, I'm not going to say when, but there were instructional moments where we had to do analysis of things like the Civil Rights Act. And little did I know that it was really CRT that we were being exposed to. but the message has got to get out that, first of all, these are the bills. You are registered to vote. You will vote this year. But in the meantime, you need to know what your civic responsibility is. We have these bills out here that will change the landscape of how our education is actually administered and may result in loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars that are needed in the public schools and the Title I schools. I want you to read it. Let's have a discussion. And then I want you to go out and talk to someone else about it. Someone that you know is registered or needs to be registered to vote. Any other questions?
I had one other one for the
Yes.
judge. This funding that we talked about, don't you see this as just another workaround for the Betsy DeVos private? When I heard you say that funding would be taken from public schools, kids can go to private schools to get their learning, and or if their parents disagree with it. Don't you see that this is another Betsy DeVos backdoor way, a private school way?
Absolutely. It's like the ghost of Christmas past. It's the ghost of Betsy DeVos, although she's no longer in the Department of Education. But this philosophy has been, it's just been taking on huge proportions, starting with the charter schools.
Yes.
People thought, that the charter schools would be the end all be all, and they find out that they aren't. But what it does is that it takes away, average daily attendance funds from the public schools. And yes, this is just another opportunity to defund as much of the public school system and curriculum as possible, because these children are not priority for the state of Georgia. They're just simply not. Not to say that the teachers don't prioritize. My heart goes out to the teachers in a time when they are now being faced possibly with restrictive regulations on how they develop their curriculum and how they teach their curriculum. We are losing teachers. We need as many teachers as I come from a family of teachers. My mother was a teacher. All of her siblings, all 7 girls from her family were teachers. And so this is a slap in the face of teachers. I was listening to a hearing 2 weeks ago on SB 325, and this teacher literally sat at the table and the microphone and said, "I am outraged and deeply offended. It looks as though you," and she was pointing to the senators, "you senators have made the teacher the enemy. We are not the enemy. We have kept our doors open and begged parents to be involved, asked them to come in and assist in the classroom, asked them to actually be involved on the parents. I don't know what it is here, but California was PTA.
Yes.
And actually become actively involved in the curriculum. But it's like hearing crickets chirping," she said. And so it just 37 years of being dedicated to teaching, I've lost the desire to teach any further. And that's another adverse effect that will continue to, have a domino effect on the teachers of America, and discourage those who are in school who want to be teachers to even bother to go that route. We have teachers here on this call: Cheryl, Perline, I'm not sure who else. But you have a sense of a spirit of Ogechi. Oh, hi, Ogechi. You have a spirit of dedication about you that is special and unique to teachers. And so that is my concern, that not only are we in the process of losing prioritizing public school education, we're losing bright, creative, kind, generous, inventive people who want to go into the teaching profession. At this point, I would ask the question, why bother?
Also, LaChance is still in the classroom at the
Oh,
college.
that's
level.
right. I'm sorry, Professor.
Oh,
Yes,
it's okay.
absolutely.
It's all right. Let me just add something to that. Stella, you are absolutely right. We lost so many good elementary, middle school teachers when we had that whole Georgia scandal, teacher scandal, if you all remember and followed that. Many of them decided not to come back, that it was simply not worth the aggravation. And now to have to be censored and not knowing for certain whether or not if my American history lesson, if my literature lesson complies, if my civic lesson complies with this whole business of not being divisive, not teaching race, when we know that once again, going back to Derek Bell, going back to Richard, the other founder of CRT, that we are looking to, again, to the philosophy that tells us that from the very beginning, that racism played a part in the establishment of America, period.
Yes.
That
Yes.
America has always been exclusive and not inclusive. That when those 55 white gentlemen, farmers, educated folk met for the Congress 1 and Congress 2, there were no women. Slaves were not included. Native Americans were not included.
There
And
you
this
go.
whole rhetoric coming from Thomas Jefferson, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That again, the idea that they knew that they were there for posterity, and because when we look to America, we will always have that problem, that issue of racism, because America cannot stand the truth. They don't want the raping, the stealing, and everything else that went along with the establishment of the USA to be taught.
And you know something else, Professor?
Yes.
Going back to the bills that would ban literature deemed to be obscene,
Yes.
I teared up when I was told that Toni Morrison's books,
Oh, cannot
yeah.
be taught.
The Bluest
The
Eye,
Bluest Eye
Yeah.
was banned. Yes. Yes.
these
Yes, it
books have
was.
been in libraries for
Yes.
decades.
Yes.
Suddenly
Yes.
is being singled out. And this woman, God rest her soul, was a Nobel Peace Prize winner,
Mhm.
an author of many books, and she taught at Oxford University and Rutgers.
Yes.
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 To say that her books are obscene
Mhm.
and objectionable and will be removed from school libraries and will
Yes.
not be teachable in the classroom just breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies, I want to give you a real-time detriment to our students, if you will, an example. A friend of mine's son, who is a brilliant young man, was the first African-American young person, entrepreneur, started his own restaurant. Some of you may have heard of him. His name is Mason. We call him Mason, the hot dog guy. 14 years old. Mason goes to online school, okay? And he's brilliant, straight A. He recently wrote for his Black History essay, Columbus, defying Columbus discovered America. And he talked about how the Indians were already here, et cetera, and how Columbus really didn't know where he was when he quote unquote discovered America. He was given an F.
Right.
Now, an F for a student who is brilliant, we all know can affect him for the rest of his life. Scholarships,
It
Absolutely.
goes on
whatever,
his transcript.
whatever,
That's right.
transcript, whatever,
right.
right? Well, his mother, talking about the PTA or whatever, but he goes to online school. His mother and his sister went to the teacher to discuss that and to, say, wait a minute, what he has written is true. This critical race theory and all this other stuff, what he wrote is true. They got his grade changed back to an A. But had that parent not stood up in real time just 2 weeks ago, this is what these people are doing to our children now, not when this bill passes or when these bills don't pass. It's happening right now.
That's right.
Thank goodness Mason had the wherewithal to write an essay like that. And then bless God that he had parents that stood up for him.
Yes.
That's in real time happening right now.
I
2
know.
weeks ago.
I
2 weeks
know.
ago.
Yeah.
No.
I know we're running low on time, but I wanted to make a point as well, as someone who's very happily retired from education. Did my 38 years, I'm very happily retired. But what I find very distressing is people's unwillingness to read and think for themselves,
Yes.
because there is so much information, misinformation, disinformation, and we just take it for gospel. We take it for the truth. You know what? Read it for yourself and find out. Half the people who are telling you that they don't want certain books to be read have not read those books themselves. So they don't
Exactly.
even know what they're objecting to.
Exactly.
And that's the shameful part about it. If you want to have an opinion, but have it based on something. And to go back to a point someone raised about Betsy DeVos, this whole thing about defunding public education, our country was founded on the right that we wanted to educate the general population and public. Initially, it wasn't everybody, but that's evolved over the years. But we need public education. So every time we take those precious dollars out of a public school for whatever reason, and your boy Kemp, I'll give him to you, now that the election season is coming, to say he's giving a raise to all the teachers when he's been sitting on that money for how many years? Sitting on that money, and now he wants to make himself look like the great benefactor.
Only to get a vote.
Money to the teachers. So no, don't fall
He's
for
trying
it.
to bribe
Don't
them.
fall for it.
He's trying to bribe them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks again. This was great, ladies. Absolutely
you.
fabulous.
Thank you. So, there was a quote, and you'll see it in the PowerPoint when you get it, under Parent Bill of Rights. And it's by a journalist named Margaret A. Edwards. And it says, too many adults wish to protect teenagers when they should be stimulating them to read life as it is lived. And in this particular instance, I see some teachers being frustrated because of their love for teaching and the fact that they want to grow individuals who can critically think for themselves, and to do the right thing when it's warranted. So I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating. We sit here talking about contacting our state senators and assembly people, and we realize in the final analysis for most of it, and this, no disrespect to you, Senator C, it's frustrating because we have a legislature that's dominated by conservatives who believe that they have the right to determine what we should read, how we should think, and how we should live. And it's frustrating. I think the most important point is that we need to get out. We need to beat the pavement to get people registered to vote, to ensure that if they need a ride to the polls, I'll rent a van and take people to the polls to vote. We have got to be more proactive as a community, because we are not. And that's the only way we're going to be able to change the complexion of the legislature here. That's the only way. It's frustrating. It's really very, very frustrating. There's a question. And I've been talking to a few people, Ms. Perline, about this very thing. Who is willing to run for school board? We have 2 seats that are up for election in District 2 and District 4. Leonard Pressburg is in District 4, and he is not running for re-election. And he was kind enough to give a virtual, virtual meeting 2 weeks ago, in which he invited people to find out what the Board of Education was about, what it was like to be a member of the board, how important it was to have diversity on the board where there, as far as I know, has never been diversity on the board, and that people should give serious consideration to running for election to the Board of Education. If you know anyone who lives in districts, and of course, with redistricting, we're not sure who's where or what for the most part, but for those who do know, we need to have candidates who have passion and a desire to see a change in this county, because without it, we're doomed.
I'm not
Oh,
in
you said-
District 4 or 1, but I nominate Perline Green. I sure do.
Oh, yeah, she says here, no, you don't. The others still have their license or something. I wasn't sure what she was referring to, but I
That's
nominate
Cheryl Court's
Perline Green,
comment. Cheryl Court knows what she put down there.
No, but Miss Perline, have you thought about just maybe setting up a temporary residence? Well, temporary that may turn into permanent residence in District 2?
I do live in District 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's not an announcement. That's not an announcement. So don't get it twisted.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of work to do. And for FDW, we have a pretty decent membership roster. And we're looking to get the members who are not currently active motivated to be involved. And I wish that more of them would have been on this call, because hopefully it would have sparked something in them to say, we have got to step up to the plate. We can no longer be whatever it is. I'm not accusing anyone of being complacent or just not necessarily concerned about what goes on around them in the world, but we are responsible for our destiny. And if we don't do something, do the call to action, do all of that, but to get your neighbor, each one reach one, get a neighbor to attend an FDW membership meeting, to come to some of the committee meetings where they can observe, so they could see the business that we do and the outreach that we are seeking to make in order to make this organization make a difference in this election year. I think that we contributed quite a lot to the 2020 elections, and this year we have an even tougher road ahead of us. So we need members. For anyone on the call who is not a member, if you would please put your name in the chat so we know who you are. We'd like to follow up with you, to make contact with you, and invite you to a meeting so you can see what it's like to be a member of such a great organization. And then we have Miss Handy Sewell, who is a level up above us, and she's here, she's participating, she's supporting us, she's doing the things that we need to do for one another. Are there any other questions? Oh, I see here, I would run, but I'd need to turn in my gun permit. Who was that? It doesn't say, but.
She knows who she is.
Oh, you're talking about Cheryl, okay. Okay, no other
Get a
questions?
taser, Cheryl.
I see Miss Zeddy unmuted her mic. I don't know if somebody's monitoring that, but Miss Zeddy Hudson.
Yes. I had a question, Ms. Stella, in reference to the phone banking.
Yes,
Because I had given one of my neighbors the website, and
yes.
she was having some problems getting on the website. And it was the website that was sent to me from Tony, the person who actually is coordinating that project. So I actually made a call to Heidi, but I see she's not here. So something is probably wrong, because normally she usually get back to me if I send a message or make a phone call to her.
May,
I just wanted some clarification.
Zadie, could I have your friend's name? Because I
Penny,
I'm
I
sorry.
think, is she still on? She was on. I don't see her now.
Miss Zadie, were you accessing that, that website only on Tuesday?
No, she was, I
That could
think
be
it
the
was on
problem.
Friday.
It's a Tuesday, if it's the one that's move.org, I believe.
Okay, so that's
No.
it's only on Tuesday?
It's on Tuesday, yes.
Okay,
No.
because before they had it Tuesday and Saturday.
No, this is Mobilize.
Mobilize, rather mobilize, yeah.
Yes,
Mobilize. It's on a
Mobilize.
Tuesday.
with Team Field 6.
Team 6, and it's Mobilize, and it's my understanding, yes, Tony would give a tutorial on Tuesday,
Yes,
and
yes,
then they have reserved some specific Saturdays to do a Zoom tutorial.
yes, they did.
Okay, so give me her name.
Okay, I'll put it in the
In
chat.
the chat, okay, all right. And I will contact her, and and Heidi will also contact her, and we'll get it straightened out.
Yeah, because she was on the meeting from the very beginning. I think she's gone now. I don't see her.
Okay, okay, because the thing about voter registration, for those of you who are on this Zoom who don't know, we have a committee called EVA, and that's an acronym for Election, Voting, and Appointments Committee. And they are over voter registration, and they work with Leonard Pressburg's organization called Fayette Votes. Well, some of you may not know, but there is a new voter registration system that I believe as we speak is being installed at the Board of Elections office. And the reason I mention that is that because Fayette Votes has a connection at the Board of Elections where one of their employees will conduct a training on how to register people to vote. I attended that training last year. And so EVA and Fayette Votes were depending upon a schedule coming out so that they could register, they could get people who are interested in voter registration to attend a training. And the training is held at the public meeting room at the government center, so that they could be sent out to register people to vote. Well, as it turns out, that has been suspended by the Board of Elections. The election superintendent has indicated that all hands on deck at the Board of Elections office are being used to implement this new voter registration system, whatever that is, and that there won't be training available by an employee to a group of people, and they like a group of 10 or more, until July. Well, that's after the first primary. That's after the election cycle gets started. So that's why Heidi, was very clear, and she's announced at every meeting, every chance she gets, that the Democratic National Committee via Mobilize has a training that they do either Tuesday or some Saturdays. But the only thing is that it's not to register people in Fayette County, it's registration across the state of Georgia, which is
Correct.
just as important.
Correct.
So, okay, so you put You haven't put that information in the chat yet, have you? Oh, there, okay. Miss Penelope,
Yes,
okay.
that's the telephone number.
Okay, thank you, Zadie, and thank
She's
you,
one of,
Zadie.
she's one of my neighbors, and she previously has worked with registering people and also phone banking, but she hasn't done it in a while. And she said that she thinks that she may try it again.
Okay,
So
okay.
she came to the meeting.
We'll definitely give her a call and get her started. But right now, for those of us who will be involved in voter registration, it won't be targeting Fayette County. It's across the state of Georgia, which is just as important. We need to get as many people registered as possible throughout the state. So thank you for that, Zadie, and thank you for your help on the voter registration.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Um,
Is there anything
Stella.
else? Yes,
Stella,
yes.
just a comment. Thank you all so much for giving us that background on critical race theory. For those of you who might be interested, both Derek Bell, who was the Harvard law professor, and his companion, who was Richard Delgado, they are the ones who gave us the critical race theory. Their books are they are published, they are out there, and you can see how Trump and the ultra conservatives went to that philosophy and extracted, again, those items on race, racism, division, etc. Because this is not what this is not what Delgado and what Derek Bell wrote. So if you are interested in going back and actually finding them out, the books are there. We are discussing them over in the AU Center, and our students are involved. And as Stella was saying, too often we get the back end of information. I went to Richard Delgado because it's one of the things that we were discussing, and I'd just like to share this with you. He says that when we look to what's happening now with this whole business of the critical race theory, as Stella mentioned, that was back in the 1970s, 1980s, when they came out with this theory as law professors. He is saying, listen, don't forget, Citizens for Renewing America, a group led by a White House budget director under Trump, offers activists model legislation to craft bans in their states. And we've been studying those bans together. And if you look at that, it says that equity, intersectionality, social justice, and woke terms are racist ideas and falsely claims that critical race theory teaches, quote, that one race or sex is superior to another race or sex. And that is not what those two, Derek Bell and Richard Delgado, state as critical race theory. They have extracted and they have flipped the switch, Stella.
Yeah.
So once again, getting the right information and getting it to our students so that we discuss, so that critical analysis there, very, very important. I did a major in both literature and history because the two cannot be separated, period. Writers are not writing in a vacuum.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that. And really the bottom line when it comes to elementary and junior high school or middle school, depending upon what part of the country you come from, it has never been an intent to teach such an esoteric concept in elementary and middle school, ever. So, for reasons that you've just stated, and we as Democrats have been critical of each other recently about our messaging. Our messaging has been so off task that, all of this vitriol and these lies have been allowed to creep in and affect those people who are receptive to believing what they're being told. So,
Stella,
yeah.
I believe another attendee has a question or had her hand up, Kathy Spears.
Okay, Kathy.
I so apologize for being late.
That's all
And
right.
I heard you say something about someone explaining critical race theory.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe you've discussed this, but those laws go beyond critical race theory.
Oh, they absolutely do.
And
Yeah.
so this is one of your better books for explaining what's going on. And it's Beneath the Surface of White Supremacy
Absolutely.
by Moon Jung.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When did you come in, Kathy? Because we have offered anyone, and you can put your information in the chat. If you want a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, it'll be emailed to you. So we need your email address.
Okay,
And
I'll put it in there.
All right.
And put the copy of the book, the name of the book in there, because we couldn't see it very well. So if you would.
The cover is, that's just the way his cover is, but there's tremendous critical race theories. Actually, I don't even know why we're talking about it so much, because it's not even used that much in scholarship anymore, because they've
Right.
advanced the topic so since then.
But let me tell you why it came up in this presentation. And that was to dispel the myth that critical race theory is involved here. It is not.
no,
It is being used as a smokescreen and a ruse by legislators and politicians to make people believe that there is some radical concept that's being attempted to be introduced into the elementary and middle school curriculum, which is not the case. It doesn't
it's a
even apply
distraction.
there.
Distraction.
It is a distraction. It doesn't even apply there.
I wanted
So-
to.
I
Sorry, I
think
want
it
to
actually
interject.
goes beyond a distraction, because the way those
Very quickly,
bills
I
are
want to
written.
interject something from Senator C. She was driving, and Senator C sent me a text message to say she's very sorry, but she was driving and she had to get off the line. But she did enjoy being part of our discussion today. But she also wanted you to know, all of us to know, that that trans bill that you mentioned earlier about transgender students, that was carried in the Senate by the other half of Fayette County. So you know what that means, that the Fayette Republicans were
Well,
behind
I
that,
can tell
of
you,
course.
Marty Harbin is the author of the bill. That speaks
Yes.
volumes. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So thank you. She just wanted that message included for
Yeah.
today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. But so that really concludes. I'm so glad we were able to do this, and I'm so grateful for the discussion that was generated by the presentation. The presentation is very detailed, and I didn't have time to get into all the detail, but you will have an opportunity at your leisure to see exactly what these bills are calling for. And it'll just make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It's just unbelievable, the subterfuge and the falsities that are perpetrated out there that people just fall right into. Is there any other question? Oh, yeah, I see, Kathy, that you. Okay, we will have this in the chat if anyone wants that information. Very, very good information. Okay, well, we have meetings coming up in the month of March. And our dear president certainly would want to